I'm Charles Koch, CEO of Koch Industries.
And I'm Brian Hooks, CEO of Stand Together. 2020 has been a year of unprecedented disruption. A global pandemic, a broken criminal justice system, disruptions in education, and divisive politics that are making everything much worse. For anyone who wants to help solve these problems, looking at our world today can be overwhelming, even disheartening. But despite that, we remain optimistic. There are incredible stories of positive change all around us. They all have one thing in common. They start with a deep belief in people. And that's why we wrote a book.
Our book is called Believe in People, Bottom-Up Solutions for a Top-Down World. Believe in People shares lessons from my life, a lot of trial and error, with the emphasis on error. But more than that, it shares lessons we've learned from people who are making a real difference. Some of the most effective, inspiring leaders I've ever met.
These change makers will give you the insights, strategies, and principles to be much more effective in your efforts to make a difference. If you want to reduce violence, learn from someone like Anton Lucky, who founded one of the biggest and most violent gangs in Dallas. But today, he's an ambassador of peace and a model for how to change the dynamic between police and communities all across the country. If you want to address a problem like addiction, we'll look to someone like Scott Strode, a guy who struggled with addiction himself. But now he's transforming how the country thinks about treatment. If you want to make change in public policy, learn from Melanie Armstrong, whose single act of courage to save her own small business has now helped more than 4 million people to find their own personal version of the American dream. If you want to alleviate poverty, learn from Jesus Harina. He grew up poor, but now he works to empower families, helping them to successfully rise out of poverty. If you want to address a problem like extreme partisanship, look to people like Van Jones and Mark Holden, whose shared beliefs on criminal justice reform turned them from adversaries to allies. And now they're working with anyone to do right. The lessons from these and many more stories of success show us that as challenging as things are today, there is a better way. And it starts with each of us. As long as we believe in people, empower people from the bottom up, and unite with anybody to do right.
These principles have enabled me to achieve more than I ever imagined, and they can do the same for you. If we embrace these principles, we can rise above the division that's tearing us apart so that every person can realize their potential and contribute to a brighter future.
So order Believe in People, and we'll donate the purchase price of the book to amazing change makers like the ones you just met.
Because each of us can make a big difference when we believe in people.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Dave Robertson, and I'm here with Charles Koch and Brian Hooks to talk about their new book, Believe in People, Bottom-Up Solutions for a Top-Down World. Charles and Brian, thank you very much for taking the time to do this today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for this. As usual, I expect a lot of really tough questions from you, Dave.
Okay, well, with that, we'll just get started. So, Charles, the first question is for you. So, this is your 4th book in the last 15 years, and that clearly requires a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of effort to be able to do that. So what was the driver? What drove you to write this book?
Well, first of all, it took a lot of courage because the book I finished just before I started this one in actual writing was Good Profit, and that took a lot of time. And as some of our listeners know, I have a day job at Koch Industries, so I worked on this thing evenings and weekends. And so my loving wife, Liz, wasn't too happy about it. So when I finished Good Profit, she announced to me, your next book will be with your next wife. Now, what she didn't know is that Brian would ultimately turn out to be my next wife.
I guess that's me. Yeah.
But seriously, it was a result of what I had learned over most of my life, the ideas I had learned. And so I wanted everyone to have the opportunity to benefit from these ideas, from the ideas of human progress that transformed my life and enabled me to accomplish more than I ever dreamed possible. And I have seen it transform so many other lives that I had this desire to help everybody have that opportunity for their good and the good of all of us. And so what I recognize, first of all, is that when I started studying these principles of human progress, is that it starts by recognizing that everyone has a gift. Everyone, virtually everyone, has a gift, and they can use that to contribute and succeed if they're empowered to do so. So the question is, how do we empower everybody so they can realize their potential and have meaning in their lives? And what I also learned through the study of history is that when societies, top-down societies in which a few had power over everybody, when a few started to go through this process and became social entrepreneurs, they transformed that society. They transformed it not perfectly, we'll never have perfect societies, but directionally toward one of equal rights and mutual benefit, where people succeed by assisting one another rather than hurting one another, and everyone has the opportunity to realize their potential. And so the other thing I realized, given my experience, that this is not a quick fix. This is not just you're sitting on the dock of the bay and it's going to come your way. You have to work at it over time. And I was fortunate that I found at least part of the narrow gifts I have at an early age, when I was in the 3rd grade, in fact. And it's amazing that how I can remember this as if it happened yesterday, because it was a real ha-ha moment. The teacher, the 3rd grade teacher, was putting math problems on the board. And I'm asking why is she doing that? The answers are obvious. And then I looked around and they weren't obvious to the other kids. Wow, I may have something that allow me to contribute and succeed and have meaning in my life. But then I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know how to use that to contribute, how to develop it. And so for the next 20 years, I was floundering around trying to find how to take this gift, develop it, and apply it in a way where I could contribute and succeed and have a meaningful life. And so I was failing at most everything. I was in and out of 8 schools before I graduated from high school, and so on, and usually getting in trouble. But then about my junior year, I said, this is not going too well, because my father was trying to overcome my independent, I'll put a euphemism on them, my independent tendencies. And so I was always in trouble, one way or another. Not real serious problem, but trouble. And doing all these tough jobs he wanted to get me out of this. He wanted me to do to get me out of this. And so I said, well, I better start applying myself in school in my junior year. So I did well enough, and I was always good enough at math and other abstract concepts to do well in math and science. So I got into MIT and got 3 engineering degrees there. And I found soon that I was a lousy engineer. But I was really good at the abstractions in engineering, the underlying theories. And so I got 3 degrees in engineering, trying to find one that would really satisfy me, and I couldn't. So I went to work for a consulting company that had a full range of consulting, all across all the disciplines. And they hired me in product development. That's the only place I could get in there. I knew I wouldn't be any good at it, and I wasn't. So I maneuvered my way to get in process development, which was a little better because it has more conceptual content in it. But that still wasn't it. I still didn't believe in myself. And so then I got transferred into management consulting. You would think, what is a 24-year-old doing in management? Because a lot of people ask that, including me. So it was great. It was a big difference because I got to work on business strategy, on innovation, and other things, which were a lot better. So I said, well, I want to be an entrepreneur. So at MIT, there were professors and students were starting new businesses. And so I'm going to find one of these and be able to invest in it and go to work for it and start a career as an entrepreneur. In the meantime, my father called, and he said he'd like for me to come back to run the company. And as tough as he'd been on me, I wanted to be independent. I said, oh, thanks, Pop, that sounds great, but I got plans. And then a short time later, he called me again, and he says, son, as you know, my health is poor, and I'm not really able to run our businesses as they should be run, and so they're not doing as well as they should, and I don't think I have long to live. So either you come back to run the company, or I'm going to sell it. And he said, I tell you what, we have two main businesses. The larger one is crude oil gathering system in southern Oklahoma. And the other is making internals for fractionating trays. And he says, you boys already own, my brothers and I, your brothers and you already own this company called Koch Engineering. So I'll let you run that any way you want from day one. The only thing you need my approval on is to sell it. Wow, I don't think I'm going to get a better offer than this. So I came back, and it was right. I mean, it was protectionist environment, and we didn't have the capabilities we needed. We weren't focused on creating value for our customers, all the things that have built Koch Industries. So I started to work on that, but I still had this empty feeling. I still didn't believe in myself. And I later, as I studied Maslow, I learned what it was. It was that I wasn't fully using my capacities and realizing my potential. So I decided I needed to learn some additional tools, some concepts that would enable me to fully contribute to my capacity. So I dedicated myself to learning all these principles of human progress from all different disciplines, from all different perspectives. And I was looking for a principle or a concept I could apply. And when I find one, I would immediately try to apply it in the company. And some of them didn't work, a lot of them, but some of them did. And wow, that improved. So I doubled down. So my whole life, that's what I've been doing ever since, is looking for principles that will enable me to better contribute. And that's what keeps me going. And then I said, well, this is working here. These principles got to work everywhere. So I use them. I got Liz to learn them. And so we use them to raise our kids. And I used them to guide my efforts in philanthropy and social work and so on. So that's what I mean, it transformed my life. And so my hope, you can see what kind of a journey that was for me. My hope for this book was that people who read it will be able to shortcut that journey and do it quicker and better and earlier in life than my 20 years. And some people don't find it till they're 50 and change their career because they're not realizing their potential in what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, for those out there that might be wondering, he's still pretty good at the math. So Brian, Charles said a lot there about ideas and lessons that are in the book. How does the book convey those messages?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a whole lot to try to fit between two covers, isn't it? Life well lived, an incredible career in business, and then a commitment for almost 60 years to helping to improve society through philanthropy. But that's what we do. We see the book as a guide for anybody who's looking around the country right now, kind of shaking their head and saying, there's got to be a better way. And there is. And it goes back to the lessons and the principles of human progress. We mentioned some of them in the opening video, but there's three big ideas in the book. The first is that the solutions to our country's problems are going to be many and varied, but they all come back to this fundamental commitment to this notion that everybody has a gift, this belief in people. Second big idea is that solutions that empower people from the bottom up tend to work better than those that treat people as problems and come from the top down. And the third idea is one that we've learned time and time again, that when we unite with anybody to do right, we can be a whole lot more effective than when we go it on our own. And so the book puts together a series of stories, people from history and the present day, that have applied those lessons to overcome what seemed like insurmountable barriers, obstacles that were preventing them from realizing their potential and ultimately holding our country back. And so we got lots of stories in there. One of them that I'll share with you is the story of Scott Strode. He's a phenomenal leader. You guys know Scott well. He started an organization called the Phoenix, which is a peer-to-peer physical fitness program for people who are struggling with addiction. And the Phoenix is incredible. It's got twice the success rates of some of the best clinical programs. And the unlikely aspect of the Phoenix, the secret to their success, is by applying those three lessons. And most notably, is investing in people that are closest to the problem. So Scott Strode himself, somebody who struggled with addiction for over a decade, isn't somebody that a whole lot of organizations, or frankly our society, looks to as the source of a solution. But when we challenge that paradigm, that notion, that top-down idea, and we invest in people like Scott, we empower a social entrepreneur to realize new and better ways to serve people, and in this case, to help people overcome one of the biggest crises in our country right now, addiction. And the book's full of a whole lot of other stories like that. And if we can learn from people like Scott and the others who have overcome these barriers, we think that offers a path forward for people who really want to make a difference.
No, that's great. There are some great motivating stories in the book for sure. You guys both used the term social entrepreneur. So Charles, what is a social entrepreneur?
Well, I think with Scott, Brian really hit on it. And the key is somebody has personal knowledge of a barrier or an obstacle that's holding people back. And it can be an internal barrier like Scott faced of addiction, or it can be an external barrier that has condemned a kid to be going to a very poor school. So they're way behind in life by the time they get out and go to work. And the secret is that they have this personal knowledge and they've learned what it takes to overcome those barriers. So each individual can contribute, succeed, and have a meaningful life. And I think the best way to really describe this, though, is to take what I think is the best example of a social entrepreneur, and that is Frederick Douglass. And I say that not only because he overcame so much to become a social entrepreneur and then achieved so much, but he wrote it all down. Just like I described what I went through and how I discovered, he did the same thing. So let me just give you like 4 key points that he emphasizes. The first is when he was 8 years old, he discovered he wasn't a slave because he was inferior. He was enslaved because he was being kept ignorant. So he said, I'll fix that. And so he taught himself to read, which was illegal, but he surreptitiously did it. And then the next aha moment was when he was 16 and he was allowed to teach Sunday school. So he decided, I'm going to not only teach Sunday school, I'm going to teach the other slaves how to read. And he said, get this, he's a slave. He's being tormented. What he says, at last, I found a way to contribute. That's how powerful that is. When you feel you can contribute and you're worth something and you begin to believe in yourself, it transforms your whole life. And so that's what, and then of course he was sent to the slave breaker to beat this out of him. And he fought back and beat up the slave breaker. And so he had another hob. He said, at last, I'm a man. And that gave him the courage to escape. He said, I'm not going to take this anymore. So he escaped, and then he got a job. And he was able to support himself. He didn't need masses supporting him and telling him what to do. He did it on his own. And he says, I'm not only a free man, I'm a free working man. And then he started going to abolitionist rallies. And he was there at one with all the top abolitionists, very skilled orators, Garrison and many others. And they called on him to speak. And he was the best of any of them. And he says, at last, I've found my gift. And so he built a career about that, but not a career to go punish all these people who had tormented him and others, but to eliminate not only the injustice of slavery, but all the other injustices, not only to black Americans, but to everybody. Now that, if we can live up to Frederick Douglass, every one of us live up to Frederick Douglass, or have a society that enables all of us to live up to Frederick, what kind of wonderful society? It'd be unbelievable.
And it's really important to have that kind of a North Star. But the point we try to make in the book is don't be intimidated by an incredible example like Frederick Douglass. There's a social entrepreneur in all of us. And
yeah, that's a high bar.
It's a high bar, and we don't all have to be Douglass.
No.
But if we can build on our gifts and find a way to contribute, that's ultimately how we're going to move society forward.
And move yourself forward.
Yeah.
And I mean, the key to all of this is believing in yourself. And the only way, I mean, you can pretend and stuff and fake it, but inside you'll know that you're not worthy. So you have to go accomplish things that help other people, and then you'll start to feel good about yourself.
That's right.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, Brian, I've heard you describe Stand Together as a community of social entrepreneurs.
That's right.
Involved in all different aspects of society. So tell us how that works.
Sure. It's a pretty unique enterprise, and it's the result of a lot of trial and error over decades, really, of Charles's philanthropy. But at this point, that's what Stand Together is, a community of social entrepreneurs, people from all sorts of different backgrounds, business leaders, philanthropists, and others who are committed to finding new and better ways to help empower people to overcome the barriers that are holding them back. And as we do that, at a scale, we help to move our society closer to this North Star that Charles described, this idea of a society based on equal rights and mutual benefit, where people succeed for themselves when they help others to improve their lives. And so that's a big job, talk about a high bar. And the only way that we can do it is by coming alongside and supporting thousands of social entrepreneurs. And we do that across what we see as the key institutions of society. We go into this a lot more in the book. But think about it as the areas of society that tend to be critical to a person's ability to develop and succeed. So you think about education, that makes sense that that's one of those key institutions. Stand Together and our partners support well over 300 universities, thousands of professors, tens of thousands of K through 12 teachers, and increasingly people who are thinking outside of those typical boxes of education and really committing themselves to empowering people as lifelong learners. Think about the important role that strong communities, another one of these key institutions, plays in this success equation in people's lives. People need strong communities and the support that they bring. And so Stand Together and our partners invest in over 200 different organizations all across the country who are finding new and better ways to empower people to lift themselves out of poverty. One of the institutions that's often left on the sidelines when we're talking about solving some of the real big challenges in our country is business. It doesn't make any sense that you live business on the sidelines. And so Stand Together works with hundreds of business leaders to figure out what they have to offer to contribute to the solutions to some of these daunting challenges that we're facing. And of course, public policy plays an important role as well. And we are fortunate to work with millions of everyday citizens, people who care about the future of their country, bring them together to empower their voice to improve public policy, both at the federal and the state level. And so you put all of that together, and it creates some pretty significant capabilities, that's the way we think about them, to approach the opportunities to address problems in our country. We try to employ this mental model that you all have pioneered at the company, build strong capabilities, and then be on the lookout for where they can create the most value based on the opportunities that come our way. So a quick story on that in the context of what we've been able to do on COVID, something that nobody could have anticipated, but when we looked at the capabilities that Stand Together had built to help people overcome poverty, we said, hey, we didn't build them for this purpose, but they can create a lot of value in the context of helping people in COVID. And so you guys have been a big part of the project Give Together Now, a project of the Family Independence Initiative, this little outfit out of Oakland, California, who were doing great work to help families in normal times to overcome poverty. The results were off the charts, helping people to improve their position by investing in the families in poverty as the solution to poverty. Well, they had developed a technology platform that was able to pivot when COVID hit and so many people lost their jobs because of the economic response to the COVID health crisis. And in very short order, the Family Independence Initiative put this technology platform out there. They made it available to what turned out to be thousands of people all across the country who wanted to help. Bottom-up empowerment. And in just a few months, we were able to bring about $120 million into the hands of over 200,000 families who found themselves, at an economic disadvantage through no fault of their own because of COVID. And just one example of the capabilities-based approach and how we can bring this whole community of social entrepreneurs to address some problems that otherwise seem, insurmountable.
Wow, that's outstanding. That's meaningful. For
Good
sure.
job. Good
Look,
job.
Yeah,
it's
nice.
not me. It's all the people in that book.
Nice work. Well, and what you described on communities, I mean, in the company, we try to apply that same philosophy in the communities in which we have operations.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're trying to find people to partner with, to be their partner of choice, and to work with them to, at the end of the day, help people improve their lives.
right.
And so we're trying to apply that same philosophy in the company.
It's these universal
Right.
principles. They work in all
Yeah.
these different domains.
No, matter of fact, that's, people say, well, what, you're doing all this social change and philanthropy. I mean, that's so different in business. No, these are the same principles. These principles of human progress apply to everything. Because progress isn't just you do this, it's the integration of everything they do, the summation of everything. And then if you do all those pieces right, then the whole is bigger than the sum of the parts.
That's right.
So Charles, in the book, you have quotes from an eclectic group of people, and anywhere from Hayek to Maslow, and then you throw in this guy named Bob Dylan, and actually you do it right at the start, chapter 1, right at the start, and the quote, I don't want to mess it up, is "He not busy being born is busy dying." What does that mean?
That is so true. I'm glad he wrote that. No, but first of all, on Dylan for a minute, how does he fit in there with Hayek and Maslow and Ricardo and Schumpeter and all the other people out there? Well, he's like they are. He's a genius in his own way. He has this gift to understand the human condition, and then write entertaining songs about it that bring this up. And actually, my favorite of it is of any of his songs is "Forever Young," and you read the words in there. That could be our theme song for Stand Together.
Is there any chance we could get you to sing it for us today?
No, that would kind of ruin the occasion. And I would hope Koch Industries. So I mean, to put it in Maslow's words, what you can be, you must be. That's what he's saying with that. Busy being born means you're in our language, you're self-actualizing. You're creating your own internal virtuous cycles of mutual benefit. You're developing, you're realizing your potential, and you're using it to help others do the same. And so that's what in another one of my role models, Viktor Frankl, said, ever more people have the means to live, but no meaning to live for. And what he's saying there, if you don't have meaning and you're not developing, you're dying, you're withering. I could throw in the second law of thermodynamics as well, or Ricardo's principle of comparative advantage, because when those are ignored, when you're not open to new ideas and doing new things, and when you're not specializing in what you do well and then exchanging from others, not only the goods and services, but the knowledge and the experiences, you're withering.
Yeah.
And so people ask me, well, why, you're 85, you've done all this, why don't you go lie on the beach? I said, what, do you want me to die? I would last about 30 minutes lying on the beach. And I'd go nuts. Every day I wake up asking, how can I contribute today? What new things can I learn? How can I improve what we're doing? I can help Dave help me look better, or whatever.
There's a lot of helping Dave. That's a wide open.
I mean, help us all. And then how do I learn from all our people and everything going on? That's what being born, and that's why people say, why are you so enthusiastic? You're an old guy. Why don't you go lie down somewhere and take it easy? Because I'm having more fun than I ever did. And it's because we are doing more new things. We got the best organization. We're doing, I mean, when I go to a meeting now, here are all the new things we're doing, particularly the bottom up. People who haven't been asked for and haven't been engaged. Now, particularly with technology, we have the ability to empower them more. And so they're coming up with more ideas from everywhere. I mean, it's blowing my mind. So it's like, for me, my dream come true when I started on this journey, let's see, when I was 27, so what is that? That was almost 60 years ago. I mean, it's beyond what I ever dreamed.
So, Brian, what does it really mean to empower people from the bottom up, and how does that differ from the problem-solving approaches we typically see in society today?
Right, it seems simple, right? You believe in people. Of course, everybody believes in people or bottom up, but it's easy to say. It's a lot harder to actually do. And so, the top-down approach, which characterizes so much of what happens in our society, not just in the United States, but all over the world, is an approach that looks at people who are struggling as problems to be solved, rather than seeing those who are struggling as having the personal knowledge and the experience to be part of the solution. And so when you look around our society today, increasingly you see an approach, say, to poverty, that doesn't come alongside people who are in poverty to empower them, but says, hey, you know what? We don't think you've got a whole lot to contribute, but hold on and we'll come and help you. And despite all of those best intentions, I mean, the results speak for themselves. They're tragic. In this country, the poverty rate hasn't budged for near 60 years, despite a whole lot of effort and frankly, a whole lot of money that's been devoted to this top-down approach. You contrast that with the story I just shared, the bottom-up approach empowering, in this case, the group, the Family Independence Initiative. I didn't say this before, but one of the secrets of FII is that they're run by people like their leader, Jesus Herena, who grew up in poverty. So he's got that personal knowledge. And their solution doesn't tell the folks in poverty what to do. It comes alongside them and says, we believe the solution's in you. You need some help, so we're going to help you to empower you to realize that solution. Same thing with what the story I shared with Scott Strode. It's a bottom-up solution to one of the biggest challenges in our country. Again, the addiction problem. The traditional programs, top-down programs that look at people who are addicted and say, we don't think you've got a whole lot to contribute. Well, the results, again, show that approach doesn't work. And so you can go on and on through a lot of the different ways that we've tried as a society to address these problems without having a whole lot of success. And so what the book puts forward is a call to action. It's a paradigm shift. If the top-down approach excludes people, this book calls for an inclusion revolution, right? We want to bring more and more people into the solutions. It's what Einstein said, right? This paradigm shift is what's necessary. We're not going to solve the problems of today with the same ideas that were used to create them. So if the top-down approach is what characterizes our society today, we need to empower people from the bottom up, and that's how we're going to find innovative solutions to finally make some progress.
See, one of the powers in bottom-up applies this concept of division of labor by comparative advantage. That is, enables everybody to focus on what they do well, what they have a passion for. They're turned on by it, and they can focus on that, and then exchange with others. And that's what lifted humanity out of dire poverty for everybody except the tiny elite. And they were all kept down, and whatever they were born into, whatever position, they were locked in that for life. Had no chance to go focus on what they were good at. And it's a whole manifestation of failure to believe in people. Right. When you believe in people, then you want to exchange with them. You want to partner with them. So you help each other. And that is so powerful. And when that's lost, then you're busy dying.
I mean, this is the exact same bottom-up approach that we're trying to employ at Koch Industries. And so why do you think that's so critical to the history of the company and the company's success?
Well, it's my life experience. As I've said, I have a gift in a narrow range, and whenever I've succeeded, it's because I partnered with people who were good at all the different things that needed to be done that I wasn't. And when I've tried to do it alone or think I can do it all, I've failed. So it's very personal with me. So what we're, first of all, what we're looking for in people we hire, people we bring on, are basically two things. I mean, we want them to live up to all our guiding principles, but we can boil that down to two things. One is they're contribution motivated, not negatively motivated, not deficiency motivated, but they want to succeed by contributing. And then the second is they have some gift or some talent that will enable them to help us create value for our constituencies, our customers, and others who we need to be successful long term. And so that's what we're looking for. And then when we have somebody like that, we want to as best we can, and we haven't done a great job of this, but we're working hard on it, to get them in a role or design a role that fits their gifts. So they're good at what they're doing, not being forced in something they're not good at. As a lot of our employees have heard me say, if I worked for an opera company and I was the business manager, I might do all right. If the tenor got sick and I had to sing tenor, we would go bankrupt overnight. And that's what we do to people. And then we give them feedback, you need to improve here. Well, you could give me singing lessons till the end of time, and I would still go broke, or I would take us all into bankruptcy. So that's the first thing, and then we've got to empower those people in those roles to fully use their knowledge and ability and their ideas, and then give them decision rights that they've earned so that they can be empowered. And as I say, with technology now, we're able to do that. So people can be more independent. That doesn't mean they don't share knowledge and get ideas from others, but now we can make quicker, better decisions with less bureaucracy because of that. And then we need to reward those people according to the value they're creating. And when I describe that, we describe that in our principles, that is then should enable that employee to self-actualize. And that's what we mean by self-actualized, being turned on, realizing their potential, and have meaning in their lives.
Charles, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but how important is the supervisor in helping each employee do that?
No, great question. Well, as you know probably better than I do, this when we have a supervisor that doesn't do that and is top down or mistreats the people so the people are turned off, then they're very destructive and they undermine everything we're trying to do here. So we're trying to do a better job. I mean, a lot of people are good at things, but wouldn't be good supervisors. And now we're talking every level, not just first line, like me as a supervisor, not that I supervise much. I mainly do what you all tell me I need to do, which is I'm very thankful for that. I need that. But we're everybody who's in any leadership position is a supervisor in some sense. And this is job one. And if you're not doing this, you can be a great individual performer, but you shouldn't be a supervisor.
That's spot on. I mean, to me, it's the most leveraged thing that any leader or supervisor does. If you can help each individual that reports to you to more fully self-actualize, then you're going to be more successful. Those individuals are going to be more successful, and the company's going to do better.
Yeah, just think of top down. You have a supervisor, and let's say they have 15 people working for them, but they make all the decisions, they have all the knowledge, and they just order people around. Well, you're using the knowledge and ideas of one person rather than 16. This is ridiculous. How on earth are you going to succeed long term? No matter how smart you think you are, you're not as smart as the combined knowledge and wisdom of the other 15.
Yeah, and I think that the traditional hierarchy of a company indicates that people need to become a supervisor or a leader to do well, and our philosophy is a little different in that regard, and it's okay to be an individual contributor. That's if you're not interested in truly helping individuals that report to you more fully self-actualize and succeed and do better, then you would be much better off being an individual contributor.
Matter of fact, if you want to be a supervisor, and we've had people determine that you aren't going to do well here because we try to reward people for the value they're helping us create for our customers and others. And if you're doing a lousy job, you're in the wrong role, you're not going to do that. So you're doomed to failure. Yep. So please, we don't want our people to fail. We want you to succeed.
Absolutely. So thinking of the key institutions, it kind of comes, a question that comes to me is, what do both of you think we need to do to get government to believe in people? Mm-hmm. Because it seems like most of what they do is try to make decisions for people and not really believe in what Charles just described.
Well, what we talk about in the book is that the only way that we're going to make progress as a country is if each one of the institutions in society is firing on all cylinders, is playing its appropriate role to empower people. And so you think about education, it's an easy one to think about. How does education work well to empower people? Government is a trickier one to think about, but there's a critical role for government to play in helping to create the conditions in society for people to succeed. And when government does that well, then policy can empower people. And when government does that poorly, it gets in their way. And so I think of the example, one that our colleagues are probably pretty familiar with, and that's criminal justice reform. So you think about bad government policy that basically judges people based on the worst mistake that they've ever made, locks them up for way too long, often for where the punishment doesn't fit the crime, and then puts a mark on them for the rest of their lives, which limits their potential. So that's an example of bad government policy. But the kind of reforms that we've seen more and more and that Stand Together and the company has been a big part of over the past, 2 decades now, I think is a good example of how government can pass policies that empower people and ultimately act on this idea that you got to believe in people. And so you think about the First Step Act, which was just passed a couple of years ago with this broad-based coalition of groups from all across society, different backgrounds, different ideas. And the idea there was, let's bet on people. Let's make sure that, when people have done something wrong, they've got to pay their debt to society. But once they've done that, let's do everything we can to set them up for success. And so you have good government policy, bad government policy. We got to focus on government policy that empowers people.
Okay, so we ask for questions from some of our employees, so
Right.
if it's okay with the two of you,
Absolutely.
we'll get into some of those right now. So the first question is from Kirsty Pickard at Koch Glitch in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And Kirsty asks, what do you believe is the biggest challenge for our society as we approach 2021?
I think it's what we've been talking about. It's this seemingly increasing tendency for top-down, one-size-fits-all, for getting power over people. And this isn't just government, this is other institutions do the same thing. Get power over people, just like we talked about a bad supervisor. We have a lot of bad supervisors running around in the country. And getting power over people rather than empowering people. So that's what we need to do. And we see that, as Brian said, in education. Look what, and I don't know in other countries, but in the U.S., we have a public school system that assigns kids to school according to their neighborhood or what we call their zip code. And if they're in a poor neighborhood with poor schools, they're locked into that. And so they're way behind. So they undermine their opportunity to realize their potential. And then another thing on this, on education that is a version of top-down, another application of it is this one size fits all. Standard, teach everybody the same thing, the same way, and do what the teacher tells you. The teacher knows the answers, and and it's teach to test. Teacher tells you what you need to know, and then you regurgitate it rather than helping you think and challenge and learn and get enthusiastic about learning. And I call that one-dimensional schooling. It's because it's not really education. You see that from the reaction of the students. They're bored to death. And so what we try to work on is what I call three-dimensional education, and that's just what we've talking about. Help each student find their gift and what will turn them on and make them lifelong learners. Then turn those into valued skills, and then use those skills to contribute and succeed by contributing. And my wife and I, Liz, started an organization here in Wichita 30 years ago with one class in one public school in a poor neighborhood called Youth Entrepreneurs. And it's just not classroom teaching, but they get to start their own business, find what they're good at, what they'd like to do. And then they learn a lot of lessons by how to get customers and how to keep track of what's working and how to organize. I mean, it's a different world. So they learn all the theories, but they learn how to apply it that will create value for others. And it transforms, we've seen it transform so many lives. So just to show you how that's worked, we're now in 20 states.
Wow. And I think this is important because, it's easy to look at some of the problems that are on the front pages of the newspapers in this country, but around the world, and miss the deeper challenges in our country. This idea that the top-down approach really has corrupted all of these key institutions. Institutions are supposed to be empowering people that are creating barriers. So the consequence of what Charles is talking about in our education system here is that fewer than 30% of kids graduate high school ready for college. And if you drill down into that number, it's much, much worse for poor kids or kids from communities of color. And so we can't survive as a country as long as that's happening over the long term. Same thing with business. I mean, it's crazy for me to think about this because I've gotten to work, in this environment for 20 years. But Gallup does a survey every couple of years. And every year it's about 70% of employees report that they find no fulfillment in their job. Can you imagine coming to work every single day and just looking at the clock the whole time. I mean, you talk about a crisis of conscience, a morale problem in our country. How are we supposed to rise to the occasion if that's what we do for most of our days? And you go on to look at what's happening because of this top-down approach. And so the biggest challenge is got to be this paradigm shift. We've got to find a way to transform these institutions so they empower people.
Boy, Brian, that's such a great point. And for all of you out there, if you truly don't find fulfillment in your work, tomorrow, talk to your supervisor and start talking about what you're interested in, what you're passionate about, and let's get you into a different role so you can enjoy what you're doing and contribute at a higher level. I agree with you. Who wants to spend their life doing that?
That's right.
Not liking what you do.
I remember one of my summer jobs, I won't name the company, but all the engineers were pooled together, and then when it came, whatever quitting time was, 5 o'clock, they'd line up about 10 minutes ahead of time to punch out. The engineers punched in and out, time clock.
Yeah.
I said, I'm going to get out of here just as quickly as I can. This is deadly.
That would have to be a long day.
Oh, terrible.
A very long day. Okay, the next question is from Mitchell Chandia at Georgia Pacific in Chile. And Mitchell wants to know, how do you see the transformation process after COVID? Will it speed up or perhaps slow down, both for society and Koch companies as we recover?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, or what I see, changes are speeding up everywhere. And I think the starting point was development of technology. And now COVID has accelerated the use of it because everybody's had to use more technology to be both work and stay safe. And so so the first is increasingly speed in development and use of technology, and then it's changed the culture, where people live, how they work, and everything. So that's changing the whole culture and affecting industries and businesses. I mean, like life and death. And then the third is probably related to these first two. We're going to see what we've seen over the last few years, big political changes, and we're going to see that accelerating. So all this is accelerating. So what we're doing as the company is accelerating our internal transformation. And so what is this new world going to look like? And we don't know for sure, but we can guess directionally where the headwinds are and where the tailwinds. So we got to adjust the visions of all our businesses and capabilities to fit these headwinds and tailwinds, and our strategies and where we invest and how we invest. And this means, as you talked about, building capabilities. Mm-hmm. So this means we've got to change how we build capabilities. In those areas where we have headwinds, we're going to need new capabilities so we can be the last one standing or survive these headwinds. And then where we have tailwinds, we've really got to ramp up our capabilities so we can capture the new opportunities. And then, most important of all, we've got to accelerate our ability to empower all our employees so they can realize their potential, and the company gets a full benefit of their ideas, their knowledge, and their abilities.
Anything to add to that, Brian?
Just that we all better work as hard as we can to get there, because I think that's right. We're all feeling that as the opportunity.
Yeah,
for sure.
To the direct question, doesn't sound like it's slowing down any.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you asked what time it was, and I told you how to make the wine.
No, that was great. So the next question is from Gregory Flowers at Georgia Pacific in Perry, Florida. And Gregory asks, how do you form the relationships needed to make positive change, working with anyone to do good, especially with all the divisiveness and negativity in the world today?
I've been hogging it, but Brian has a better answer for that than I do, I'm sure.
Well, I mean, we've been learning about how to do this now for, the better part of a couple of decades, probably more than that. But what we found is that when you make an effort and when you look for common ground, rather than focus on issues that divide people, what we found is that those who look for common ground tend to find it. And what seems like it's going to be a big risk in extending your hand to a partner that you believe shares vision with you on a specific issue turns out to be some of the best decisions that you can make, because you bring in not just different capabilities and better knowledge, but there's strengths in numbers, and there's strength in showing that despite all of the divisions in the country, people who have different backgrounds and different ideas can come together to get things done. And we've seen that across all of our different initiatives that stand together. And frankly, it's a lesson that we learned, Charles, from your theory of partnerships in the company.
Well, and that's, as I said earlier, this is what I learned long ago. I'm good at a narrow range of things. And so the only way I've succeeded is by partnering. So that's my go-to position. I don't have to fail anymore to figure that out. I've failed enough doing that. And so there are three things in looking for a partner. We share vision, and I used to think, okay, we need to share broad visions. No, we need to share vision on this particular initiative. We can disagree on all the other stuff, but if we share this vision, and then we have to share values, because if we don't do that, then we're not going to get along for long. And then we have to have complementary capabilities, so we make each other better.
Yeah. It seems to me like it goes back to this concept of being contribution motivated too, and it's really people trying to figure out what we can do to make progress on something as opposed to just pointing out what's wrong.
That's right.
And it seems like right now there's a lot of just pointing out what's wrong.
And blaming people.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is that the vast majority of people, at least in this country, and I'm sure that this is the case elsewhere, that's what they want. They just want to find a way to do things better.
Yeah.
There was a study by a group called More in Common of the whole American population. And what they found is that there's a very narrow group of people at both ideological extremes that are kind of dug in. But it's about 85% of the country that they characterized as the exhausted majority. Right? The exhausted majority. Does anybody feel like an exhausted majority? And so when you start
No, I'm not exhausted. I'm just getting going.
You start to show people, hey, there's a better way, and it includes working with people that you hadn't imagined working with. Man, people rush to that because that's what most people want.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Okay, the next question is from Eduardo Moraga, and he's at Guardian's facility in Luxembourg. Question is, helping people improve their lives is a vision which many of us share. Why do you think that there's a substantial part of the population who does not share this vision? And what advice could you share with us to help us change that?
Well, it means that so many people really don't believe in people. And you look at all the ills or not all, but most of the ills in the earth are from that. That's where slavery comes from. You didn't believe in people. That's where prejudice comes from. All these ills come from that. And so that's the key. So how do we get someone to believe in people? Well, it starts, they got to believe in themselves. So how do they believe in themselves? Well, as we've gone through, they've got to find their gift and then find a way to develop it and use it to contribute. And then they'll start feeling better about themselves. And then they'll realize they don't know everything and they're going to need other people. And they go find other people that can help them. And then they start believing in people, just like we did with Van Jones. He was fighting us, and he's the same way. Now he believes in a lot of what we do, and we believe in a lot of what he does. So it comes down to people realizing that if everybody can be empowered, so everybody's contributing, we're all better off. So you want to hold these people back because you don't like them? Well, all you're doing is creating conflict and losing. You're not only losing the benefit of their contributions, now they're negative. And so they're going to try to undermine you. So if you want to have a civilization that has progress, you've got to throw that out and start believing in people.
That's right.
Yeah, there's a great example in the book, I think, of you, of the point of believing in yourself. And there's a guy named Mike Cooper at Georgia Pacific, and he was worried about, you know, whether his job would be replaced with technology. And his job was loading pallets of paper via forklift onto trucks. And so, so he educated himself. I think the company participated in that. And now he owns a patent that we're applying across many of our companies now, where these laser-guided vehicles, instead of a person on a forklift truck, it's automated. We have laser-guided vehicles, and they very precisely load the pallets onto the truck now without damaging them. And so he had to believe in himself to start that process, and there are many other examples of people in the book that have done that.
It's this virtuous cycle.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Well, Charles and Brian, thank you so much for sharing these ideas about the book, about Believe in People, and for all of you out there, if you're interested in learning more about this, you can go to DNet and click on Believe in People, and you can get involved in a book club, or if there's not one there for you, feel free to start one for yourself, and you can talk about these ideas and figure out how you may be able to apply them in your part of the world. Most importantly, I encourage leaders to have conversations with their employees to help them understand what their gift is. Like Charles started in the 3rd grade. Well, none of us are in the 3rd grade anymore, but figure out what all of our people are passionate about, what they like, what would really help them to enjoy every day and be able to contribute at the highest level. So please have those conversations and don't wait to start. Let's start today or tomorrow and really get out there and make a difference. For the two of you, thank you so much for sharing these ideas and taking the time to kind of bring the book to life for us. We greatly appreciate it.
Yeah,
Well,
it was a lot of
thank
fun.
you. Great
Thanks.
questions.
Okay.
This is the point where we
Yeah, I guess.
keep talking.